welcome to our Forpoint Lunch and Learn session. I guess what we're looking at this year in this particular session is we've recently implemented an AP automation solution to work with Sunsystems. The product is called Zudello. Today we've got Ned from Zudello here. He's an implementation consultant. And he's been working quite closely with myself to help us build the integration between Zudello and Sunsystems. And we recently worked quite closely in our first implementation of Zudello with a Sunsystems client, which was done late last year, and the customer went live with the product at the start of the year. So we're all pretty excited about this new area of change. We're going to hand over to Ned now. He's going to give you a little bit of background on Zudello and what it does, and also show you, what's possible in terms of improving the efficiencies with your AP invoicing process. And that's going to cover the approvals and digitization of invoices, and push it through to Sunsystems, where you can always then go back and retrieve the document from Zudello. So I'll hand over to Ned, and then you'll see me back in the demo right at the end, just to show you the Sunsystems piece of it. Thanks, Ned.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. Hello all. Apologies for my lack of camera. Having some issues there, but should be right. So I guess the best way to start is, as David said, a brief overview of who I am and who Zudello is. So we're a Brisbane-based company. We were founded about 5 years ago with a focus on automating finance operations. We have a customer base that's incredibly varied across a number of industries. As you can see here, hospitality, not-for-profit. We've got a number of medical services clients, and a whole smattering of others. And that's not just in Australia. That's between Australia, New Zealand, the UK and the EU, and even a couple over in Canada and the US. So constantly expanding both our customer base and our product offering. As we get more of a sense of what it is that customers really need out of our product, we can then make sure we're adding in those features and customizing ourselves. The core capabilities of Zudello really boil down to 4 things and 4 ways that it will help your business out. And as you can see here, those are, number 1, to eliminate manual work. So the idea there is that Zudello will remove the need for repetitive manual tasks that you're doing each and every day, and allow you to focus on more meaningful work, particularly AP and finance teams, making decisions that people need to make, building relationships with your customers and your suppliers and within your internal teams, and other stuff as well. We enforce compliance in a number of ways. The most notable and the most relevant for a Sunsystems integration, as it currently stands, would be with our approval workflows. So those are predefined approval workflows that we work out with you to ensure they're consistent with what your business needs. And that way you're not trusting that everybody's going to remember the right person to approve each and every invoice. Those decisions are handled by Zudello every time, and invoices just flow on through to the correct person. We also have 2- and 3-way matching for customers using purchase orders and goods receipts and things like that. And that's just another way we enforce compliance as well. We can improve your security. That's both internal and external. So internally, we have a detailed audit log that's not editable and can't be changed. We also have very strict controls over who can see what, when they can see it, and why they can see it. And then in terms of external fraud, we have a number of duplicate detection checks. We have bank account checks, ABN checks and validations, and a whole heap of other things there to make sure that the invoices you're paying are not only paid in the right amount, but to the correct person as well, and that you're only paying valid invoices. And the real outcome of all of this is that bottom right square there, that we improve relationships. So the idea being that, if you're paying your invoices faster, you're getting them right more often, or wrong less often, I should say, You're going to have better relationships with your suppliers, and you're also going to have happier staff because they're no longer needing to spend hours a day simply typing in numbers. In terms of the specifics of Zudello and Sunsystems, it is a two-way integration. So we both pull information from Sunsystems and then pass it back. So as you can see, these two top things here, invoice and credit journal entries, they actually go both ways. So we will both pull them from Sunsystems and then create them to Sunsystems as well. And in terms of all the information that you're passing on those invoices, so your company codes, your suppliers, GLs, any analysis codes that you might have, all of that gets pulled through from Sunsystems, and Sun is your source of truth. So you're only needing to set things up in one place, and your Zudello environment will essentially just mirror your Sunsystems environment. That is a regular fetch. It happens either hourly or daily to make sure that you're always working with current information, and that you're not, I guess, looking for a supplier that doesn't exist or stuff like that. If you need to make changes on the fly, well, they're going to be reflected in Zudello very, very quickly. We can also customize this integration if need be, but the way that David and I have got this worked out currently is, to us, probably the simplest way, and we think we've got it really nailed down to be quite a tight integration at the moment. So I think the best thing for here is...
I'd probably add just one more thing there. We've tried to look at what our customers want. So we built a bit of capacity in there as well. We know that some clients will want who the approvers were, when was it approved. They know they want that information to flow through to Sun. So we've sort of taken a generic approach, and we think we can hit 80 to 90% of integration requirements. And then there'll be small things that clients may need that are specific to them. And Zudello's pretty flexible in terms of accommodating those things as well.
That's exactly right. Beautiful. Well, I will open up our Zudello page and show you what we're working with here. Lovely. So everybody should be able to see that Zudello homepage here. And what I'll do is give you a brief overview of what it is we're actually looking at the moment. So here in the middle, we have a list of invoices currently sitting within this team in Zudello, within this Zudello account. And then everything else really that you're seeing is just ways that you can filter what you're looking at, because while you've got 7 invoices in here, it's quite easy to move around them, but give it 6 months and you've got several thousand invoices sitting in here. All of a sudden you need some more, I guess, tools to allow you to look at the invoices that you want to be looking at. So you can filter it down by the company that you're working with, by the type of document that you're interested in. You can filter down to specific suppliers, and you can even filter down to specific users. So I might want to see only those that are sitting with David, or if I want to filter to myself, I can do that as well. So a number of tools just to make things easier there. I guess the logical place to start here is, how do these invoices get into Zudello? And so there's a number of ways, and different customers use different ways. The simplest of all is a drag and drop. And I'll demonstrate that now. So in the background here, I've got my downloads folder open. I've got a couple of invoices in there, and I'm going to drag both of them in. And I want to show you, I guess, 2 things straight off the bat. So what we'll see here is that one of them has got a green tick, and that's the one that is now scanning down here, and that information is being extracted. The other one has an error message, and if I go and hover on that, it's going to tell me that we've actually already got that invoice in the system. We know it's the same invoice, and so we're not going to bother extracting it because we've already got it. And so that just allows you to not have to worry about whether or not you've uploaded something. We'll take care of that for you. You can double check and triple check by dragging the same invoice multiple times, and what we'll do is just give you a link that's going to take you to that existing document. So very, very handy. If I open up, oh, there we are. That one's now finished scanning, which is nice. If I open up an existing document, we'll be able to see, I guess, all the bits and bobs that do get pulled off of it. So here on the invoice, here on the right, we've got the original invoice. That just allows you to check what's been extracted with what you can see with your own eyes. And then on the left, we've got all the information we were able to pull off of it. So we've got the invoice number, the date issued, the company name, and then that's been matched to a company within our system. So as you can see, these names don't match because this is just a demo invoice. But what we've done here is matched it to an existing supplier within Sun. And in future, whenever we receive an invoice from demo company, we will know that that's actually Acme IT Services Group, and we'll line those two up. Down on the lines, we've got everything that's been extracted, including the description. We've got the quantity, the price, the total, and then obviously all the document totals down the bottom as well. Now, one thing that we get asked a lot is whether there's any control, there's any flexibility in how these documents are mapped, and there absolutely is. That's where our AI assistant comes into play. What that will allow you to do is essentially customize what fields are going where within Zudello. So perhaps for this customer, you don't want the purchase order to go into the purchase order number field. You'd rather that goes into the reference field. All you need to do is go and click on the fields, remove the ones you don't want, add in the ones you do want, and away you go. That reference number will now go into the, PO number will now go into the reference field in future. You would click save and approve. I'm not going to do it because I want the purchase order number. But what that will do is in future, that will then always apply the same rule. So you make the change once, and on all future invoices from this supplier, we will add your trained rules. And that just means that anytime you're making a change to how an invoice is extracted, you're only making it once. You're not having to do the same thing day in, day out, because you've got one supplier that names their invoice fields strangely. A couple of other small features I will point out is, as you can see, we've got a couple of validations over here that this one does not match. So for example, the ABN has been flagged as invalid. If I go and chuck in here a valid ABN, we will then look it up against the register, find the entity name. We'll highlight that this doesn't actually match what you've got here, but we can tell you that it is active, it is GST registered, and that allows you to straight away check, if you're getting charged tax on an invoice, is the ABN actually registered for GST? Do the names match up? Is the ABN valid? All that type of stuff. The other thing that we're seeing here is that the bank account doesn't match. If we have a look there, we can then compare what's on the invoice, the BSB and account number, with what's been pulled from Sun. And that can then be a trigger for you guys to essentially go and check those with the supplier and figure out whether they've actually changed their bank details and you've got the wrong ones, or whether this is a fraudulent invoice that's come in. For some clients, and actually for the existing Sunsystems integration client we do have, they actually choose to block all invoices where the bank account numbers don't match, or if the supplier bank account in Sunsystems is blank, they don't want that processed at all. So they actually block it there at the start, and they make sure that the bank details are matching up before they're processing anything. So that's just an idea of what we can do with those capabilities there. Now, once we're happy with an invoice, we will essentially put it through for approval. So all I do is click save and submit here. These approval workflows can be based on any number of things, but for this particular team, essentially, this is just going to go to my manager, and then it's going to check whether he has the relevant approval limit to approve this invoice. If he does, then it will go on through to Sun. If he doesn't, it will go to his manager and continue on like that. So surprise, surprise, my manager is me. Who would have thunk it? Let's go ahead and approve. One other thing I just received as well that you guys can't see is I just got an email with details of this invoice. It says approval is required for invoice number, whatever it is, 1043. It then has a link back to this document. It has the original document attached, and I can actually click the approve and reject buttons straight from that email. So very, very handy. So Peter has now received his approval to make sure everything's good. I'm just going to go ahead and approve for Peter. And that's, again, going to go and check his limit and make sure all is okay. And one thing I want to point out is if we do reject an invoice at any point, we actually force users to put in a message why they're rejecting. And so that makes it very handy for the AP team, who are invariably going to receive that invoice back again, so that they've got some idea of why this invoice is rejected. Is it, incorrect pricing from the supplier? Did they just fill in the GL account wrong? Whatever it might be. Lovely. So that one has now flowed on through to Sunsystems. It's marked as completed within Zudello, and yeah, the journal entry is created. So on my home screen, that invoice will have disappeared. I can go and find it if I want to, but it's hidden by default. But at any point, anyone can come back and reference this and see, who approved it. It was me, and then it was Peter. We can look at the audit history, and we can see, when I changed things, what I changed them from and to, and what date I did it on, and all that kind of stuff. So none of this really disappears. And we're going to hold on to this invoice for, an indeterminate amount of time. We don't delete invoices after any amount of time. So you'll always have that history. You can look in Sunsystems. That will have a link straight back to the document. And David and the Forpoint team will set up a one-click to allow you to click straight back to the Zudello invoice, which is very, very handy. I guess, David, did you want to show this journal entry in Sun?
Yeah, let's quickly switch over.
Yeah,
and
I'll stop sharing.
I'll share my screen. So I'm going to log into Sun through our browser interface. But you can also, it works with the standard client interface as well. The user interface might look a little bit different, but we still have our menu structures, and you can still search for things. So in this case, I'll search for maybe inquiry. It was Acme, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
And the way we're identifying journals coming from Zudello, we're using the journal source. So very easy we'll still have journal type, but we use ZUD as a good way to identify invoices. So I think invoice 1043 was the one you posted.
Yeah, ledger. Yeah, we are journal number 390. Yeah.
So you can see what we've done is we've passed the Zudello link. We've got the capacity to also pass on the approvers' names and details. So, you've got that information within Sun, not necessarily having to go to Zudello. We can add to that as well. And then I've also got a button that just says open in Zudello. So it'll take that URL and it'll push you through to Zudello. So even the finance team members can actually see the invoices that have been pushed into that have originated from Zudello. It's important to note Zudello is not a user-based licensing model, so you can have as many users logging in this instance to just finance being the ones who might examine invoices. It really is just done it's calculated on how many invoices are processed throughout the month. So really just wanted to highlight that the integration's there. It's pretty much for us, it's out of the box, and we look at, we use our design workshop to sort of say, well, this is what we're going to do for you. Do you want anything over and above that? Let me hand back to Neville. Oh, sorry, Ned. Sorry.
Yeah. Easy. One thing I do want to, small thing to point out there is, as David said, anyone could be clicking that link. You will need the correct permissions within Zudello, though. So just because you've got the link doesn't mean you can necessarily see the invoice if it's been decided that you shouldn't be able to see it within Zudello. Yeah. Lovely. If I switch back here.
I think I made you presenter again, Ned.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cool. So one other thing we can do that is particularly useful for Sunsystems clients is our statement reconciliation. So what that allows you to do is when you receive an end of month statement from your supplier, you're then able to reconcile that against the journal entries within Sun, identify any discrepancies if they're saying that you've underpaid them or something like that. You can also identify missing invoices. And the good thing that does is gives you the ability to just ignore everything that's correct and only focus on the things that are incorrect. So there's really no more need for the old ruler and a highlighter and printing out all your invoices for the month. You can simply, have this sort of instant list of only those invoices that are missing, and then you can send an automatically generated email with all the details of those invoices to the supplier email on file. So what was a hour process becomes 30 seconds as you click through and request any copies that are outstanding. From my side of things, that's about it. That's an overview of Zudello. I don't want to go too deep because it will just get a bit overwhelming. I think it's probably more useful to get into any questions that anyone has and the specifics of any use cases that if anyone thinks that their business has something squirrely that might be hard for us to handle, I'd love to have a chat.
Likewise, Ned and I are here if you want to ask us about the last project we did, or if you've got, if you want to take a deeper dive within Zudello and ask them more difficult questions, we're here to answer it.
I'm just allowing everybody to actually talk, so feel free to use your microphones now. I think everybody's is enabled. Now that everybody's microphones are enabled, please feel free to mute if there's any background noise. That would be great. Yeah.
Leslie, do you have any fake questions that you can ask while we're here? Just
yeah, I'd really love to hear about the implementation that you guys did for the client. Maybe tell us a little bit about who the client was, or kind of what their industry needs were, or what their challenges were, and how Zudello has solved that.
I'll start that off. So it was a not-for-profit organization, and they run a lot of entities. So I think they had about 50 entities.
250.
250. There you go.
Yeah.
The work that we did was actually quite minimal. So we established what had to be set up in Sun. We helped the Zudello team make sure the journal's posted, and then we sort of got feedback from the client saying, look, we need some more information to come through. So we created more placeholders, and then Zudello populated those fields. And we were really there just to support the client from an implementation perspective. The reality was, from our end, it was probably 2 or 3 days of effort. Ned, what was it like, I guess, from your end in terms of overall lapse time and implementation effort?
It was relatively simple. Obviously, for us, one of the good things of Zudello is that, particularly for Sun, the number of entities, whether it's 1 or 500, doesn't have too much of an impact on how much is required from us. It all stays within one centralized team, but it just gives you the ability to limit users' visibility to their certain entities and things like that. Most of the time spent at the first half, I guess at the front end of the implementation, was around figuring out just how their approvals worked, because there wasn't a clear set in stone way that things were always approved. On top of that, they had, I guess, a bit of a quirk of their business model, is that each of the entities has these independent people that work there. And then all of their invoices come into one centralized accounts team. So we worked hard with them to figure out, what was the simplest way to get their approvals working, while also making sure we didn't have 250 unconnected users, one for each entity, having to be trained on this system and stuff like that. So, we ended up with quite a, I guess, bespoke approval flow for them. And after a very minor amount of tweaking, it worked out. We also had a little bit of a, sorry, far away.
No, I was going to say, finance was ultimately the funnel, because nothing went through to Sun without finance doing the last review making sure the codings were all accurate and up to date. And when there was some ambiguity, finance would look at the invoice, code it, and push it off to the right approver. Where we couldn't automate the approvals. So yeah, at the end of the day, we always add the last step where finance sort of do a final review before it's pushed into the accounting system, because at the end of the day, finance own the accounting system. They don't want rubbish to come into the system. And lapse time, was it a month or about a month and a half?
I think it was between 4 and 6 weeks. I think it ended up being about 5, maybe just over. Yeah, I think it was. We had a bit of wiggle room with them, actually. Yeah, 6 we had, and we got it sort of just on the last day we managed to get it in. So yeah, 6 weeks it was implemented, and they did a bit of a staggered rollout as well. So then there was a bit more as we went, just fixing things up, and they're now sort of going ahead with the full business, which is nice. One thing I guess, just to build on what David was saying about the finance team, they're doing a lot of the coding. The way this particular client's approval flow worked was that the manager out at each entity would only send an invoice into Zudello once they had approved it. So the invoice coming in was essentially their approval. Depending on the invoice that's coming in, the email that's coming in from, we can then apply a default location so that finance aren't having to go every time and go, all right, this one's coming in from Brisbane head office, set the location to Brisbane head office. That would just happen automatically based on the email. So that was one of the ways that we just sort of knocked out one of those manual tasks for the finance team, and made sure that they weren't having to do the same clicking every single time an invoice came in.
Yep, and just to confirm a couple of things. So Zudello is cloud-based SaaS product, multi-tenant SaaS product. It's talking to Sunsystems through the Sunsystems Connect API. So it's not really dealing with batch files. It's all a modern integration. And, whilst it's not real time, it doesn't necessarily need to be. The posting to Sun is real time, but pulling out the master data is just something that's scheduled to make sure the lists are up to date. But you're talking about, you're not adding new GL accounts every day. You're not adding departments and projects every day. So I think Ned said it's synchronized every hour. So usually we find that meets clients' requirements.
Yeah, exactly. One more point there. I don't want to get too technical with it, but on the security side of things, Sunsystems is one of the integrations that uses our middleware, we call it. Essentially, it's just a piece of software that we will install on your server. And what that means is that there are actually no incoming calls from Zudello to your server. All of the calls are going from your system to our system, and that just makes it even more secure. And I would be astounded if there's any businesses on the call for whom that won't fit your security requirements.
Great,
Okay.
thanks, David. Sorry, David. I have a question from John. How hard is it to configure the workflow? So is it more about permissions rather than technical process, or can you just walk through a little bit more about the workflow capabilities of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the workflows are all handled by us, by the implementation team. So what we essentially do, I'll give you a run through of how an implementation would work. First, we would go through a number of demos and scoping to make sure that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. Once we are happy with everything there, we set up one or more discovery sessions, depending on how big your project is. And that's where we sit down and we figure out, all the workflows that you need. How do your approvals work, or how do you want them to work using this integration? Are there any other custom workflows you might need to automate other areas of your business? We don't really discuss the technical side of it. We rather discuss the functional side of it, what you guys will be seeing day to day, because there's no need for me to run through how the the workflow is going to be set up. All you need to know is when I click X, what happens, and how do I get this to go where I want it to go. We figure out that entire process down to the most granular details, and then we provide you with a statement of work before kicking off the implementation. Once you're happy with that and we've got any kinks worked out, we then build all the workflows from our side, because obviously we've got the expertise. So for us, it's very easy, whereas for you guys, it would be quite a challenge, I dare say. And then, yeah, we take care of all the implementation side of things and hand over a system to you for testing to make sure that you're happy with everything.
Would it be fair to say, though, Ned, that the workflows are meant to be dynamic? So it's not like we're going out there to hard code values. They're meant to sort of adapt. So if you had a requirement for specific users, approving if they're department managers or whatever, that would be built into a table that would maintain that. So if you had someone who's a department manager and they changed it someone else, you would change that piece, but the workflow itself would not change. That would just be business as usual.
That's exactly right. In fact, I might just show you, because that might, I guess, demonstrate a bit of what David's talking about. So this is an example of how you would control your approval limits and who's manager. Who is whose manager? Is that the correct? Anyway. So this is the table that you would use to control your approvals. As you can see, most of these emails are just aliases of mine. But yeah, you would have the users on the left, each user's limit, and then their manager. And if anything were to change, you can simply go in, change that, and then away you go. All of Peter Smith's emails will now go through to Leslie. Approvals will go to Leslie if they need to be approved again. There's no need to change the workflow. The workflow will always reference these tables, and that just makes it so much easier to manage from your end, particularly when you have staff leaving or restructuring. Maybe these limits are going to change. It's a really simple task to take care of, rather than going and changing workflows or anything like that.
Leslie, any other questions? Anything else on the chat?
No, nothing as yet. So I've just created a poll as well, just to provide a little bit of feedback if anybody has, anything that they could contribute to a star rating for the webinar. So how valuable was the information? That'd be really great to capture that on the poll section. But no other questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Ned, for joining us today and showing us Zudello and the integration we built through to Sunsystems.